All right, shalom, shalom. First off, give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashim Yahushai, Bahashim, Rakar giving double honors to the apostles and the elders of GMS who taught me this truth. Salutes and honors to the elect, all the brothers across the four corners who are enduring in both truth and sincerity, all the men and women who follow. This is Brother Kratazah from the Fountain of Living Waters, coming back at you with another lesson through the spirit and power of Yahweh Bashim Yahushai. This lesson being entitled The Jewish Diaspora, Gentiles / Greece, and we are under grace. All right, so we've been speaking about the old covenant and the new covenant, but now like I said, we are under grace. So I want to get into us being under grace, but in order to fully understand the language which is written in Ephesians, you have to understand the history, right? So I'm gonna kind of go out of order. Um, Let me see. Okay, so um, here in Ephesians 2:12, it speaks about, it says that at that time you were without Hamashiach, being aliens from the commonwealth of Israel and strangers from the covenants of promise, having no hope without the Most High in the world. Right? So people will use this to try to justify and saying that you had been in times past Gentiles, right? So people will use that as like an outlet to say that anyone can be saved, anyone can get in there because the Gentiles and being aliens and whatnot. But as we hear this truth, we know and we understand that you have to be an Israelite by blood to be saved. Period. You know, there's no workaround or loophole to that. So now let's get understanding on who these aliens are. Who are these people who are alienated from the Commonwealth of Israel, and how did they get like that? So let's start with first Maccabees, all right? And Lord's will, this is edifying. Y'all bear with me. This might be a little lengthy, but it's a lot of good information. So Baba Kwashai, y'all bear with me with this one. So in First Maccabees, let's just start at the top, and we'll work our way down to the point. Chapter 1, verse 1, it says, "And it happened that after Alexander, the son of Philip the Macedonian, who came out of the land of Shittim, had smitten Darius, the king of the Persians and Medes, that he reigned in his stead the first over Greece." So, speaking about the Alexander the Great, "and made many wars and won many strongholds and slew the kings of the earth and went through the ends of the earth and took spoils of many nations, insomuch that the earth was quiet before him, whereupon he was exalted and his heart was lifted up." Now we have a map right here of that Greek Empire. So Alexander took over all this land. Okay, and we'll fast forward a bit. It was after he died, it was chopped up into pieces, so to speak, and given to his generals who pretty much fought over the land. All right, so this is a matter of fact, even to back it up even further than that, the children of Israel, went off from serving the Lord, and the Lord gave us into the hands of first the Babylonians. All right, that was the end of our rulership. Now we became servants unto the nations. That was the beginning of us being servants unto the nations. But at that time, we still had, our kings and rulers in place until the Babylonians came. right? So we went into the captivity of the Babylonians, who passed us off then to the Persians and Medes when they went down, then to the Greeks when they went down, and to the Romans when they went down, right? So we were, subject unto all these different kingdoms. So as we read in Maccabees, Darius, the king of the Persians and Medes, was defeated by Alexander. So one thing about one thing about the Persians and Medes, which I don't have a map for them, but they didn't enforce their way of thinking, their religion on people. They kind of, how can I put this? Kind of was like a go with the flow kind of deal, you know. Some of their holidays and some of their customs, some but not really their religious beliefs. The Greeks, on the other hand, the Greeks really wanted you to become Greek, right? And really engulf yourself into that so-called Greek culture. All right, this is where you get the word Hellenist, right? A Hellenist is a person living in Hellenistic times uh, who was Greek in language, outlook, and way of life, but not a Greek in ancestry. Going back to the map, Greece is right here. It looks like a hand, right? And it's a bunch of little islands. That's Greece. You know, Judea has nothing to do with Greece. Egypt has nothing to do with Greece. Babylon has nothing to do with Greece. What was Persia in this area has nothing to do with Greece. Pakistan and all the way to India, they're not Greece, but this is part of the Greek Empire. So you had Greek rulers in all these places, all right, putting Greek laws into place, Greek religion, wanting you to serve Greek gods, so on and so forth, pushing that Greek way of life, right? The people of Bactria may not have been Greeks, the people itself, but the Greek way of life was pushed on them. And we can read that here in First Maccabees. So let's just jump down. In verse 10, it says, "And there came out of them a wicked root, Antiochus, surnamed Epiphanes, son of Antiochus the king." So this is Antiochus Epiphanes, the son of Antiochus III. It says, "Who had been hostage at Rome, and he reigned in the 137th year of the kingdom of the Greeks. In those days there went out of Israel wicked men, who persuaded many, saying, Let us go make a covenant with the heathen that are round about us, for since we departed from them, we have had much sorrow." Right? So you have Israelites who wanted to become Hellenists, right? Who wanted to leave off from being a Jew and to become a Greek. They're not Greek by blood or by ancestry, but in language, outlook, and way of life. They're the ones who put on the togas. They are the ones who were in the Olympic Games and in the gymnasiums, all of that, worshiping Zeus and all of those Greek gods, right? So Hellenic, I put in, Hellenic Greek speaking Jew. It says Hellenistic Jews were Greek speaking Jews who lived in the Greek speaking world during the Hellenistic period, roughly 323 BC to 31 BC. They adopted aspects of Greek culture and language while maintaining their Jewish faith. So you had people, still in the Greek world who kept the Jewish faith, right? Who still worship Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, or shall I say in this time, who worship, the Most High Yahweh, but may have lived in Cilicia, may have lived in Thrace, may have lived in Babylon or Alexandria, Cyrene, which we're going to get into those cities here shortly. But they may have spoke Greek. So you have both. You have Greek-speaking Jews, and you have Jews who um, totally immerse themselves in Greek culture, and over the course of time forget that they're actually Jews, right? So it's not just one, but you have, you know, both kind of people there. All right. So let me see, where was I at? Dang, I lost my place. Did I exit out of something? Damn. Okay, here we go. Here we go. Call you Richard Meshai. Um, no, there was something else that I was. Let's go back to Maccabees. All right. So verse 12 it says, so this device pleased them well. Then certain of the people were so forward herein that they went to the king, who gave them license to do after the ordinances of the heathen. Right. So they just started doing all kind of wild stuff, all kind of Greek stuff. I'll keep going. It says, whereupon they built a place of exercise at Jerusalem according to the customs of the heathen, right? A gymnasium, which the word gymnasium means house of nakedness, where you got those the what's it called, Greco-Roman wrestling. You know, yeah, men greased up, butt naked, wrestling each other. You know, when you look up Olympic wrestling, if I can spell. Um, how's it? I think it's called starting form or starting position or something. Yeah. So this is how it starts. This is how the match would start. Right before the whistle's even blown. Matter of fact, there we go right here. The arm is tucked underneath and he's behind them. So imagine you'll not do slack it. Don't imagine. Do not imagine. But this is what they would do. But with no clothes on, all greased up. It's very alphabet community, and that's what the so-called white man is about that alphabet activity. There's no reason for two men even to ever be in this position, much less without clothes on. But we get the picture with that. So skipping down, um, verse 40, it says, verse 41, verse 41, it says, moreover, King Antiochus wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one people, and everyone should leave his laws, so all the heathen agreed according to the commandment of the king. Yea, many also of the Israelites consented to his religion and sacrificed unto idols and profaned the Sabbath. Right? It says, for the king had sent letters by messengers into Jerusalem, into the cities of Judah, that they should follow the strange laws of the land and forbid burnt offerings and sacrifice and drink offerings in the temple, and that they should profane the Sabbaths and festival days and pollute the sanctuary and holy people. Right? So Jake just completely went off, but they made it illegal to be an Israelite. Okay. Also during this time, which you had what was called the Jewish diaspora. All right, so the Jewish diaspora in the time of the Greeks, it was during the Hellenistic period, which we went over that. The Hellenistic period, 323 BC to 31 BCE. Following Alexander the Great, which we read about him in First Maccabees, conquest, Jewish communities expanded throughout the Greek world, forming a significant diaspora. These communities are sometimes called Romanote Jews, which, matter of fact, I seen that. Hold on. Let me. Greek-speaking Jews. Of the Greek-speaking Jews, it says Greek-speaking Jews, also known as Romanotes, have a long history in Greece and the broader Greek-speaking world. They developed a unique culture with their own language, um, Yavanic. That's in I don't know, but that's that Yiddish shit. It says in distinct traditions, while Yavanic is no longer widely spoken, Greek is the language of modern Romanic communities. It says this term broadly is probably just like a slang, a slang form of Jewish, of the Jewish language. So this term broadly refers to Jewish communities in the Greek-speaking world. Those include Egypt and Turkey, who integrated Greek culture and philosophy with their Jewish beliefs. They just married the two. Romanate. Okay, so let's go back to over here. It says that they thrived in various cities and regions, interacting with and influencing Greek culture while also maintaining their distinct Jewish identity. Right. So let's go into these places, man. So I looked up, I was watching a video, and I had to just double check, some of the language. But he said that Babylon, the city Babylon, not Babylon the empire, but the city, Babylon, which is in Iraq, Babylon, Antioch, Cyrene, Alexandria, these four cities had more Jews in them than Jerusalem. Right? He says, yes, during certain periods, the Jewish populations in Alexandria, Antioch, and Babylon were indeed larger than the Jewish population in Jerusalem. This was particularly true after the Babylonian exile and during the Hellenistic period, when Alexandria and Antioch became major centers of Jewish life outside Judea. So you have more Jews outside of Jerusalem and Israel than that were in, Jerusalem and Israel. And the scriptures really back this up. So when you go to Acts chapter 2, and they start speaking in tongues, Acts 2:8 says, "How hear we every man in our own tongue, wherein we were born, Parthians and Medes and Elamites and dwellers in Mesopotamia and Judea and Cappadocia and Pontus and Asia and Phrygia and Pamphylia and Egypt and parts of Libya about Cyrene and strangers of Rome, Jews and proselytes, Cretes and Arabians, we do hear them speak in our tongue, in our language, the wonderful works of the Most High." So you had Jewish people, you had Israelites in all these different places around the Greek world. All right, and when you go and you look at this, you see Pontus and Phrygia and Cappadocia and Cyrene and Libya and Babylon and what else did they say? What am I looking for? Elamites, right? Elamites would be, pretty much from this line east. These are all Elamite, which the modern day Elamites are the Persians and the Indians, the Pakistanis and all of that. All these people, but you had Jews in all these communities, and then these are people that came back to Jerusalem, all right, and celebrated, the Passover and the Pentecost, and all the other holy days. They may have spoke these languages. They may have spoke Greek. They may have spoke the language of the city that they were in, but they held on to who they were. All right, but you also had people in these cities who did not hold on to who they were, right? Who um, immersed themselves into this Greek culture and became Gentiles, became aliens from the Commonwealth of Israel. Now the picture is starting to look a little more clear, right? You also have the Septuagint, right? A brief history of the Septuagint. The origins of the Septuagint, the very first translation of the Hebrew Bible made into Greek, probably as early as the 3rd century BC, uh, traditionally is associated with the legend involving 72 translators commissioned by Ptolemy II Philadelphus, hence the name Septuagint. Right, so it says, while the legend is likely embellished, it highlights the translation significance as the first major translation of Hebrew scriptures into another language. Who do you think did that? All right. It was the Jakes that were in Alexandria, Egypt, who spoke Greek, who wanted their Bible translated into Greek. It says the letters of Aristotelius tells the story of 72 translators, 6 from each of the 12 tribes of Israel, translating the Pentecost, the Pentateuch. I can't pronounce that, in 72 days. So that just shows you, that Jake was in these communities, you know, packed in these communities. It's Cyrene, Alexandria, Babylon, and Antioch, which is right about here in Syria. Okay, and we're going to read about these cities as well, because we're going to go into the scriptures and, just like I said, filter everything through the scriptures. So we got Acts 2. Let's go to Acts 13. Now, when you go to Acts 13 and start at the top, Acts 13:1, it says, now there was a church that was in what? At Antioch, serving prophets and teachers. So you had prophets and teachers in Antioch. Well, why were they in Antioch? Because you had a big community of Israel already in Syria in Antioch. It says certain prophets and teachers as Barnabas and Simeon, that was called Niger, right, which means black. Why would they call him that? Because he was probably a dark-skinned Jake. You don't call him a white guy, Niger or nigger, really. And Lucius of Cyrene. So you had Lucius of Cyrene. He's from Cyrene. He's from one of these big communities of Israelites, and he's over here. Why? Because they knew, and they fuck with each other, so to speak. They went back and forth. They knew that there was this big pocket of Israelites all around the Greek world at this time. Well, really, now this is transitioned to the Roman Empire. So, let me see. Come over here. Roman Empire. Damn, that's not what I wanted to do. Just bear with me. Right. So you got Cyrene, Alexandria, you got Babylon, You got Antioch, uh, Judea, all right, and they went through these cities. Okay, so hold on. Matter of fact, let me slow back down. Go back to Acts 13. All right, so you have Lucius of Cyrene and Manaen, which had been brought up with Herod the Tetrarch and Saul, and they ministered to the Lord and fasted the Holy Spirit and said, "Separate me, Barnabas and Saul, for the work whereunto I have called them." So Barnabas and Paul, Saul, who was then called Paul, were separated, all right, for a mission for the Lord. Okay, so when you jump down, you read all the way down. All right, Paul turns to the Gentiles. I'll just start right there. Acts 13 and 44 says, and the next day came almost the whole city together to hear the word of the Most High. But when the Jews saw the multitudes, they were filled with envy and spake against those things which were spoken by Paul, contradicting and blaspheming. Which, we understand Paul is preaching Yahweh Shai. So Jake, if a nigga can't get it, we moving on. Jake couldn't get it. Says, then Paul and Barnabas waxed bold and said, it was necessary that the word of the Most High should first have been spoken to you, right? The Jews, the people who know that they're Israelites. But seeing you put it from you and judge yourselves unworthy of everlasting life, lo, we turn to the Gentiles. They're not saying that they're going to turn to white people and let's go get some Hamites and some Arabs. No, they're saying we're going to go to these Gentiles, the same people who were in these communities, right? That we just read over, the Parthians, the Medes, the Elamites, Mesopotamians, Cappadocia and Pontus and Asia, Phrygia and Pamphylia, Egypt, Alexandria and Cyrene, Rome, all these different places. This is who they're going to go get. The people who were part of the diaspora, right? The people who left Israel, let me rephrase, the people whose ancestors left Israel and went to these other different places, right? So this is who they're going to speak to. It says, for so have the Lord commanded us, saying, I have set thee to be a light to the Gentiles, that thou should be for salvation unto the end of the earth. And when the Gentiles heard this, they were glad and glorified the word of the Lord, as many as were ordained to eternal life believed. Right? And the scriptures speak about Israel by name have kept thy precepts, but not the heathen. Weigh our wickedness in the balance. I believe that's what it says. And that's to see that Israel by name have kept thy precepts, but not the heathen. The heathen they're not going to rejoice over this because it's not for them. But the word is going to quicken. I'm using that word quicken for a reason. We'll go through it. But the word is going to quicken. It's going to make alive the spirit within the Israelite who's supposed to hear this word. All right. It's almost like a sleeper cell. Like we've been righteously hypnotized so that, once we hear this word, the spirit activates within us and who can but prophesy, right? So this is what they went and did. Okay. So let's just move forward to Acts 14. So it says, and when it came to pass, 14:1, and when it came to pass in Iconium, that they went both together into the synagogue of the Jews and spake, that a great multitude, both of Jews and also of the Greeks, believed. And the unbelieving Jews, again, these hating niggas, stirred up the Gentiles and made their minds evil, affected against the brethren. right? So you always had Jews that believed and Jews that didn't, and you also had Jews who didn't know they were Jews who are finding out they're Jews, just like they are today. You have Jake who believe and push this word. Okay, you also have Jakes who come against this word, and Jakes that don't know that they're Jakes, and who need to be woken up. All right, there's nothing new under the sun. All right, so when you go and you I think I thought I had it. Yeah, here we go. Paul's missionary journey, starting in Jerusalem and then going into Antioch, and then Derbe and Lystra and Iconium and Antioch and all these different places. They went and they preached the word, but they weren't speaking to um, you know non-Israelites. They were speaking to Israelites in these places because these places were filled with Antioch with Jews. Corinth was filled with Jews. Ephesians was filled with Jews. I'm speaking of these two places in particular because books were made from these places. The Ephesians were a letter written to the people of Ephesus. Same with Corinthians. Same with Thessalonica and Philippi, right? The Philippians. All right. The scriptures speak about the church of Berea. Who looked up, who basically double checked the scriptures to make sure that everything was everything. This isn't an old wives' tale that we're speaking about, man. But this Bible is a intricate puzzle, which you have to have the Spirit of the Most High to be able to decipher and to put the pieces together. So now that we know and we understand who these Gentiles are, who these Greeks are, and how they got there, let's speak about where we're at right now in the old covenant and the new covenant. We know that in the old covenant, it was to Israel and only Israel, but the Most High gave us a bill of divorce, right? We know that the new covenant, the word will be written in our inward parts and we'll never sin again. So we're clearly not in the old, we're clearly not in the new. Where are we now? Right now we are in the middle, we're in grace. Okay, so now we're going to read in Ephesians 2, and we're going to read down, and also I want to get it in the NLT. So I guess we'll read to about chapter or so to verse 10. So or so. We'll read to 12. All right, so Ephesians 2 and 1, it says, and you have he quickened, there's that word, you have he made alive, who were dead in trespasses and sins. Well, how will we have been dead in trespasses and sins? Because we were those generations of people, who went and lived in these other places and became enamored and trapped within Greek culture. So now that's how we're living in sin, living in our trespasses. The other nations always lived in those wicked acts, right? So it wouldn't make sense to say who, and you have he quickened who were dead in trespasses and sins, where in times past you walked according to the course of this world. You always walk like that, but we were on track and then we got off track, and now after the Lord's sacrifice, we're able to come back and get back on track. But let's keep reading. It says, wherein the times past he walked according to the course of this world, according to the prince of the power of the air, according to Satan, and the spirit that now worketh in the children of disobedience. So we were going off, and basically doing the will of the spiritual demon Satan and not the will of Yahweh Shem Yahushai, among whom also we all had conversation in the times past in lust of our flesh, fulfilling the desires of the flesh and of the mind, and were by nature the children of wrath, even as others. Right? Even in these times, we were once in the world and enamored and captured by the things of the world, but now we're really lined up for annihilation, for eradication, because that's what America is going to come to. And we once fell into, that number. It says, but the Most High, who is rich in mercy for his great love, wherewith he loved us, even when we were dead in sins, hath quickened us together with Hamashiach. By grace ye are saved. Even when we were in, that Gentile state of mind, the Most High loved us so much, he gave us a way out. I'll say that again. He loved us so much, he gave us a way out. Matter of fact, let me hold this real quick. Oh man, how does it go? Come on. If that's it. Ephesians 1. So it says, Ephesians 1 and 4, it says, according as he hath chosen us in him before the foundation of the world, that we should be holy and without blame before him in love. Now, if the Lord chose us before the foundation of the world, then why would he have to go? So let me back it up. If the Lord chose the whole world, and he chose Edomites, and he chose Israelites, and he chose Hamites, and he chose Ishmaelites, and he chose Japhites, so on and so forth. If he chose the whole world, ultimately, before the world was even made, why start off with only Israel? Answer me that. According as he has chosen us in him, this is the same book. This is the previous chapter. So everything speaking about in this chapter, in this verse, also applies to everyone in this chapter, in this verse, these verses. It's the same letter, written to the same people, the people of Ephesus. According as he has chosen us in him before the foundation of the world, that we should be holy and without blame before him in love. There's only one holy people. There's only one people that's set apart, and that's Israel. It says, having predestinated us unto the adoption of the children by Hamashiach Yahushai to himself, according to the good pleasure of his will, to the praise of the glory of his grace, wherein he have made us accepted in the beloved. Right? So this just shows you who this is for. Because we were chosen before the foundation of the world. You can't get anybody else to fit in that. All right. So even when we were dead in sins, even, when we went into these different communities during the diaspora, and, we were in Cyrene and Alexandria and Cilicia and Antioch and Babylon and Cappadocia and, so on and so forth, living in sin. All right. The Lord always had his chosen who were meant to come back unto him. And that was the job that Paul and Barnabas was given, right? That was the mission. Going back to verse 1. Barnabas, it's like a verse 2, Slakia, as they ministered to the Lord and fasted to the Holy Spirit and said, separate me, Barnabas and Saul, for the work whereunto I have called them, right? That they would be the light of the Gentiles. Hey, we need all these other Jakes to come in. Everyone deserves an opportunity at this. Yeah, you have people who speak. Matter of fact, let me see if I can find that real quick. Just bear with me real quick. One second, Baba Bashar. All right, I know we're getting a little long in the tooth, so I'll play this and we'll finish in Ephesians and we'll end it.
A reason it matters that Jesus is black? Yeah, I know what you're saying. It doesn't matter. It matters, bro. We stole an entire identity from these people. There was a race that was chosen by God, okay? When God was playing this Sims game, he chose a black character, okay? Because that most closely related and identified with his personality. He wanted to be humble. He wanted to come as a meek person. Bro, the entire Bible is a redemptive story about black people. From going from last to they're going to be first, bro. It's the entire Bible is like the redemption of a race that was being used for slavery since the beginning of time. Think about this. This is why black people are superior to white people. This is why they can run faster. They have harder heads. This is why they can jump higher. They're the chosen race of God. It's so in your face, dude. The Egyptians with the cornrow hair, and now where are all our Egyptian people, bro? I don't have any Egyptian friends. I've never met an Egyptian, dude. It's like they just disappeared, dude. What happened to that whole race of people? It's black people, okay? When you read the Bible, the reason it doesn't make sense to you is because you're not replacing the word Jew or Hebrew with black person. Black people, you have the most sacred, beautiful position. You have the biggest shoes to fill. I am so sorry for everything. You'll all see. You'll all see when we get up there. You'll see when we get up there and Juicy J is playing, okay? You'll be like, oh, oops, crazy dude on TikTok was right. It's everywhere in history. White people whitewash history wherever we go. We take that for ourselves. Bro, the Egyptians had electricity, okay? The Luxor, the Black Pyramid that shoots up light into the sky. What do you think that's about, dude? They had electricity, dude. The Nile had all the elements for batteries and electricity, like the copper and the salt water and the limestone and everything. Look up the Djed Towers, dude. Anyway, Jesus is black and he's coming back. The reason it matters that Jesus is black.
I thought he said something in here about that might have been a different video, but speaking about like him going around in the Roman towns, you know, when you read the scriptures and like how do you know a Jew came into the town and how would you know that there's another video out there. Just bear with me. Let me see if I can find it. If not, then we get back to the scripture. Yeah, Slovakia. I'm not sure where the video is, but there's a video the guy was saying, like, how would you differentiate if there was a Jew in your town? If you're in, Rome and, you're in, the ex-Roman town, how would you know that that's a Jew? Well, because it's a black guy. If a black guy walks into your town, oh, that's a Jew. Because if how would you separate? Let me see. All right. This girl right here. how would you know the difference between the two? Yeah, one got different eye color or hair color or something like that, but they're all pretty much the same, right? They look the same. But and I just for I don't know why I did a woman, but it's probably just what I clicked on. But if somebody like this walked into your town, you know, you would know the difference. Oh yeah, well, that's that nigga, you know. But the point, the point which the man or the Lord is only working with men, but that's beside the point. The point is you could differentiate, who was who by what they look like, and Jake was, of a darker skin. Um, but getting back to the point, back to the point. Um, verse 5, it says, Ephesians 2:5, even when we were dead in sins, have quickened us, have made us alive together with Hamashiach. By grace ye are saved. So we're going to be saved by grace. It says, and have raised us up together and made us sit together in heavenly places. In heavenly places in Hamashiach Yahushai, that in the ages to come he might show the exceeding riches of his grace in his kindness toward us through Hamashiach Yahushai. For by grace are ye saved through faith, and if not that of yourselves, it is the gift of the Most High. So we're saved through grace, right? It says, not of works, lest any man should boast. For we are his workmanship, created in Hamashiach Yahushua into good works, which the Most High before ordained that we should walk in them. Right? So, matter of fact, let me get that portion in the NLT. It says, the Most High saved you by his grace when you believed, and you can't take credit for this. It is a gift from the Most High. Salvation is not a reward for the good things we have done, so none of us can boast about it. For we are the Most High's masterpiece. He has created us anew in a Mashiach Yahushai, so we can do good things, so we can do the good things he planned for us long ago. Remember, we read in the first chapter that we were chosen before the foundation of the world and predestined, right? It says, don't forget that you Gentiles used to be outsiders, right? The people who lived in these places, they used to be outsiders. You were called uncircumcised heathens by the Jews, the people who knew that they were Jews, who were proud of their circumcision, even though it affected only their bodies and not their hearts, not their minds, right? Because they kept the laws, but if you can't accept Yahushua, then you're wrong. You're wrong. It says, in those days you were living apart from Hamashiach. You were excluded from the citizenship among the people of Israel. Let me say that again. They were excluded from the citizenship among the people of Israel. What does that say in verse 12 in the KJV? Okay, yep. And at that time you were without Hamashiach, being aliens from the commonwealth of Israel and strangers from the covenants of the promise, having no hope and without the Most High in the world. Right? Just bound to Drizzown. But now the Lord came back, and now he has opened his arms for all of us. Right? It says, you were excluded from the citizenship from among the people of Israel, and you did not know the covenant promises the Most High made to them. You lived in this world without the Most High and without hope, right? But now you have been united. Damn. Here we go. But now you have been united with Hamashiach Yahushai once you were far away from the Most High, but now you have been brought near to him through the blood of Hamashiach, right? So that's how we are under grace. This is how you get the people who were excluded from the citizenship of Israel to be included in that grace, who are Israelites, in the path that their fathers went to get to where we were at in this time. So, Lord's will, I know this was a long one, but Lord's will is edifying. And, we give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashim Yahushai, Bahashim, Rakar Kadash, giving double honors to the apostles and the elders of GMS who taught me this truth. Salutes and honors to the elect, all the brothers across the four corners who are enduring in truth and sincerity, all the men and the women who follow. Shalom.